All right. So first of all, hello everyone. My name is Kasey. I have my partner Seeam here, and we're part of UWPM, or on at least on behalf of you, Waterloo Product Management Club. We're here to provide you with the last workshop of, I believe, Saturday night here, which is called Pitch the Product. Essentially, the goal here with this entire workshop will just be teaching you the fundamental frameworks and the processes that you could probably apply to when you're definitely pitching your hack or your project to the judges on judging day. So hopefully you get to learn a lot of stuff, at least from a product management perspective, how to really efficiently tailor your pitch in the best way possible. So let's get on ahead and get started here. So again, my name is Kasey. I'm in 4B Science of Business. So I'm actually graduating this year from Waterloo. I'm currently also an intern at Righton, so we're a startup based in Vancouver. But I've also done internships in product management at Viva Systems, SAP, Certic, which is a blockchain startup based in New York, and another consulting organization called Prisma. So yeah, I got some pretty interesting product experience to definitely share with you guys throughout the presentation. And I'll give it to CM here.
Hey there, I'm Seeam. I'm a 3A systems design student from Waterloo. So through my undergrad, I've had the chance to take on a variety of product roles across North America. And currently I'm working at Loblaw Digital on their marketplace team. So yeah, I'm super excited to share this workshop with you guys. As someone who's competed in over 5 hackathons, I know just how important your pitch can be. So I'm happy to share any insight I can, which can help you guys out. So before I begin, I just want to warn you guys that Kasey and I are going to be sharing a lot of information with you guys. That being said, I know that you don't have too much time to share your pitch. I think you have a couple of minutes, if anything. So for that reason, feel free to take bits and pieces of our advice and equip your pitch in the most optimal way possible.
Awesome.
So we could jump to the next slide.
Yeah, I think we're on the slide here. Yeah. Oh, yeah, this one. I think I can quickly cover this here. So as you guys can see, the table of contents, essentially here, this kind of maps out essentially what we want to talk about throughout the entire night. Kind of really similar to how, like you would tackle a product design challenge in nature would just be, identifying problem spaces, identifying users, use cases, a specific target market, how you can best tailor that to your solution, you can come up with the best solution possible, and how you would be able to articulate and analyze what solution was the best one, while obviously, providing that sort of product management phase. So we can go kick it off from here.
For sure. So like I mentioned, I know you guys have already started building your hacks. If anything, you're probably close to being completed. So for that reason, you might have to restructure some of the things we're going to talk about. But at your best, just try and provide the judges with as much content related to what we share with you guys, and I'm sure it'll help out. So the first step in pitching any product is to make sure that you understand your problem landscape. So before you even start writing any code or formulating a solution at the start, it's imperative that you know everything about the problem space that you're tackling. Of course, to solve a problem, you need to first know exactly what it is exactly that you're trying to solve. So in a hackathon, I know this can be virtually anything. So be sure to articulate just what the problem is that you're solving. So once you've identified that, it's critical to then develop a strong understanding of all the relevant details of the problem, both qualitative and quantitative. This might include things like who the problem is impacting specifically, how many people are part of this demographic, and whether or not there are already other products in this market trying to solve the same problem. You see, having this information beforehand, ideally before you start developing your product, is critical because it's exactly what you should use as the backbone of your product. So when you're pitching to your judges, make sure you share exactly what the problem is that you're targeting, who is impacted by this problem, and whether or not there are existing solutions in the market that are trying to solve this problem. Awesome. So we can jump to the next slide. So while researching the problem landscape, an area which you definitely want to place a major focus on is understanding who your users are and who your customers are. Now note, these two bodies are not interchangeable. They're often different people, actually. You see, a user is someone who would use the product or hack, while the customer is the person who purchases your product. Now, in case you still don't understand, here's another example. So let's look at Slack, the app which I'm sure you've all used. Slack's customers are other businesses, for example, Facebook, who pay for access to the application. The users of Slack, however, are the individual employees within Facebook who use Slack every day. From here, it's critical that you understand the needs of these users, namely what it is exactly they're looking for from a product like yours. For a bit more depth, and this is not something you need to include in your pitch, but a common tool used by product managers to better understand their users is the persona. So the persona is the image shown here on the side. It's basically a visual which highlights their characteristics so that you have a better understanding of what your generic user looks like. So if you were to take anything away from the slide, I would say that be sure to articulate just who your users are for your hack and make sure that the judges clearly understand that. Awesome. So here, jump to the next slide. Great. So surely understanding your users and customers and their needs is the most important research you can do. But something else you might want to mention in order to showcase the economic potential for your hack is the target market. So this refers to the kinds of groups or people that are part of the market that you're targeting. So now, given that you likely have a small time frame to share your pitch, this isn't tremendously important. However, if you're ever asked a question regarding the viability or the reach of your hack, your target market is exactly what you want to mention. A target market, for example, might just be college students between the ages of 19 and 24. It's really dependent on your hack specifically. So we could jump to the next slide. We could jump to the next slide. Yeah, awesome. Okay. So the next area that we want to look at pertains to use cases. So use cases are essentially a list of ways that a user might interact with your product. For example, one use case for Slack is where someone might want to deliver a company-wide announcement to each and every member. When it comes to your pitch, you want to go into detail about exactly what kind of use cases your hack might fulfill. In other words, go into depth about how the user can interact with your system and what kind of outcomes they will be able to achieve. So you can jump to the next slide. See, selecting use cases that you wish to target is extremely important. For one, you want to make sure that the use cases that you solve will add value to the company and highly satisfy the user. Secondly, you want to make sure that the use case you're satisfying is feasible so that your team can actually get it done. Finally, you want to determine whether you want to tackle use cases that are more like game changers or more like business extenders. Now, there isn't an answer as to which type of use case is better, as it really depends on the situation. I would assume that for a hack, your product is more likely to be a game changer. With that in mind, you might want to go into depth about how your hack can solve these use cases, which previous products could not.
Yeah, and I guess kind of just to add on to that, per se, with if you are able to see on the left-hand side column here, there are specific examples I provided in terms of what is a game changer and what's an extender. Assuming that your hack obviously is more of like a game changer, which, I guess, judges wouldn't want to expect your thing is really trying to revolutionize or at least like disrupt this a specific niche use case. What you really want to efficiently articulate is the fact that, there's a lot of pros over a lot of the different cons that you'll identify with your game changer. Per se, with, for example, for an AR-based functionality for an interior designer, you want to say like against traditional competitors, this revolutionizes the game because XYZ, versus not just direct competitors, but it can also revolutionize just the industry, whatnot, from a business perspective in terms of revenue growth or acquisition or whatever it is. And obviously, this can help really define the impact that your game changer potentially will have.
Awesome. So when giving your pitch, you want to make sure that the judges understand just why you chose the solution that you did. After all, I'm sure that you had dozens of other designs in mind, which you could have also chosen. So for that reason, it's handy to articulate just why you chose the design that you did, and just how that particular design will add more value to the user than any other. Now, this is where product managers use a framework for prioritization. One example is the RICE framework. What this matrix does is that it allows you, the designer, to evaluate different designs against each other, against different criteria, to ultimately decide which design would bring your company the most value. So in the application of a pitch, you essentially want to go into depth about how you evaluated the pros and cons of all your potential designs, and just how your design exceeded the other designs against these criteria. So we could jump to the next slide, Kasey.
Yeah, awesome. I think this is kind of my slide here. I think I can take it on from here. But yes, kind of going off of what Seeam was talking about in terms of, evaluating your solutions based on the rights framework and whatnot. I also wanted to point out this sort of Venn diagram that you've probably seen, jump across the web from time to time when you're looking at, how you can pretty much evaluate whether or not a specific use case or feature idea should be built. This Venn diagram, as you can see, there's desirability is one factor, viability in terms of will it, be a great business opportunity to generate some sort of profit or monetize, actual monetized value. And finally, feasibility, can you actually build it with the technical prowess that you do have? Obviously, from organization team to team, it's very important to see that there is a tailored or specific weight of one of these factors over another. But on the whole, it is important to kind of articulate and dictate that all three of these are collaborative essentially when you do have a hack that you want to pitch to the judges. For example, if you are pitching an AR or VR based app on your mobile phone, you want to say that, this sort of mobile app can be monetized. It has some sort of SaaS model that you can use to leverage to generate profit, or some other really cool viable way for the app to make money. Secondly, how technically feasible was it to kind of build the MVP, and how easily would you be able to add scalable features to it to really, continue driving customer engagement and acquisition and whatnot. And finally, does this actually fit a customer need? Does this app actually not just have the customers, like Seeam mentioned, but also have the actual users who want to use and engage with the platform? So these three things are the main fundamental factors that you also always want to kind of have in the back of your mind when you're trying to talk about your pitch. And finally, another really important thing here, and this is kind of like later down the road when you're really, articulated why you want to build the hack and then what sort of impact your hack really has. But then finally showing the judges how the software architecture actually works. Now, keep in mind that not all judges are going to be technical. You want to kind of be mindful in terms of how much technicality you want to kind of dig into when you are talking about your hack. But usually you want to kind of give a really nice high-level system architecture about it, just so the judges kind of understand where you're coming from, what sort of modern tools are being used. Use some sort of buzzwords and key terms there to really show that, how really modern your stack kind of is. Just here for an example, on the right-hand side, you have, the specific design at the front end. You kind of want to mention, it's being built in React or Vue.js or any sort of like front-end library. Back-end, for example, you have the app logic. You can really easily illustrate the back-end logic, or at least map it out with, adding the database, adding what sort of APIs you're calling from, and really kind of going from there. Being mindful, obviously, that you don't want to go too specific in your actual app logic, but it is pretty important and useful sometimes. Really showcase your specific project, the solution, how it actually solves that specific use case, but then finally, what the solution actually entails from a software perspective. So what sort of backend are you using? What sort of file system? What database are you using? Are these specific tools you're using from a software perspective the most efficient and modern way? And is it scalable? So these are the main specific points you kind of want to at least showcase. And even after the demo, when you are demoing, you want to mention that, the backend you're using, the app and the web server you're using are in fact the best ones that you've chosen and are scalable for, kind of ties back down to business viability again. Scalability might factor into business viability in terms of growing a business opportunity or scaling your product or feature beyond the MVP, all that stuff. So jumping on to the next. And trade-offs. One of the most important things are trade-offs, and as you might know, as many of you guys are engineers. I'm personally not actually an engineer, so it might seem counterintuitive for me to be educating everyone here about trade-offs from a product perspective, but it's actually really important to really note during your hack, at least hack the number pitch for your hack, is that there are pros and cons for so many different specific fields for your hack, not just perhaps per se from a high level, oh, this is better than X competitor. The tech that we're using is a little bit more efficient than X competitor, but also from a product perspective too, not just from an engineering perspective. For example, from a product perspective, you want to dig into how the feature really does solve the consumer solution or the user solution, or sorry, the user problem better than competitors, or how does it revolutionize the current use case that users are kind of going through right now with the current product processes. And also the negative stuff too, such as, does this entail harder scalability from a viability or a price point perspective? Does this actually beat out current industry solutions per se from a product perspective? So you want to dig in not just from the engineering side, but also from the product side too. There are a lot of different pros and cons you really want to dig into, or at least talk about from both angles. And then, yeah, to kind of finally summarize what Seeam and I have kind of been going on tangent about for the past 15 to 20 minutes or so. Really, tying back what we've covered bit by bit together, it's all kind of as part of a whole broad framework that we kind of generally took, derived from the circles method, if you've ever heard about the circles method when you're doing product design interviews. But it's really similar, and we, as nature-wise at least, but we feel that applying bits and pieces of what we kind of teach you throughout this, throughout this entire presentation makes a lot of sense. You research the problem, obviously, you want to dig into the problem space so that you understand, from a business viability and actual consumer need perspective, is the specific niche use case you're trying to tackle worth it? Do people actually see a need for this? And then finally, understanding the user, understanding behavior. This drives design decisions, design systems. This drives product and feature decisions. And this finally also might drive technical engineering decisions too. And then understanding your market again, target market. Is there a total addressable market beyond just the MVP target market? Are there secondary users or indirect users, not just the specific users you focused on? And is there a difference between the consumer and the user? Addressing use cases, first of all, again, like Seeam mentioned, there are so many different use cases that you kind of want to watch out for. Really pinpoint a specific and explicit use case that you want to target or work on throughout your entire hack, so that judges know what specific need that you are focusing on, especially compared to industry competitors. And finally, again, evaluating the solutions with the RICE framework, with the Venn diagram, and with the pros and cons trade-off sort of method to really showcase that you've analyzed every single different sort of hack, or at least alternative, that could potentially solve that said use case or problem that you've kind of identified. And then when you have identified that specific hack or solution, how do you showcase and depict that from a pitching perspective, at least on a presentation scale? Are judges able to understand how your hack works from a software architecture perspective? And then obviously, again, like I mentioned before, trade-offs. Is this the best hack, not just from the engineering perspective, but also from a product perspective? And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover here. So yeah, once again, just kind of going back again from the beginning, thank you very much for kind of listening to Seeam and I's presentation. I know it was pretty short in terms of time, but pretty heavy in terms of content. So thank you again. And Seeam, if you have any last words here.
Yeah, so thank you so much for attending our presentation. I know that you guys don't have too much time to prepare for your pitch or to actually do your pitch. So I guess try and absorb as much as you could from this presentation. Just be sure to always articulate things like who you're building your hack for, how it solves their problems, what their problem actually was, and then why you decided to choose the design that you did. So essentially articulating your design process to the judges is going to be super critical. Thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I guess, stop sharing here with my presentation slides. But I believe that obviously, this recording will be uploaded on YouTube at a later date. And we are open to Q&A or just general questions if anyone has any.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions. I think
a lot of people are asking for these slides. So I think that's a great metric that we can kind of use to decide that our slides are of use to people. But if people do have questions as well, we can take now. We have a lot of time.
How do you quickly capture the attention of the judges slash audience? Okay, I guess I could tackle this. So I guess this is where it's important to really understand your problem space. So things like statistics are going to be super important here. So if you start off with something like, did you know that X percentage of the population is impacted by this problem and they're impacted in this way? Right away, they understand just how significant and how severe the problem is that you're trying to solve, which is ultimately going to have them more interested in the solution that you managed to build. So I always like to think that for any pitch, the first 15 seconds of it is when the judges decide whether or not they're going to listen a lot to your rest of your presentation. So that's why it's really important to try and hook your judges' attention as well as possible during this introduction.
Awesome. And I think, what's good, Iris? She's asking basically what the judging rubric is like. I actually don't have access to that said rubric. I think it might be a cheat code to tell everyone the actual specific judging rubric. But what I can say though is, like I kind of mentioned during the presentation, it might be like half of it will be particularly the specific use case in target market or the specific problem you're trying to solve. So half of it, think about it as, are you solving the right problem? Do the judges see that your problem or your hack at least answers the need or answers an actual specific need? So it'd be half of that. And the other half would just be specifically what technology you used, how really revolutionizing or innovative is your technology. Like if you built a simple web app that does a specific use case or specific solution that already is an industry standard, like you're just trying to build another social mobile web app or something like that, or a really simple snake game, versus you're building something that no other competitor has probably done better, or at least you're building something really niche, really cool, or like for example, something ML based that can solve a specific problem that no industry solution has been able to solve so far, or has done it in a very peculiar way. But yeah, stuff like that where you're it's kind of like a half and half. But yes, thanks for the kind words too.
How much time should we allocate for the demo part of the app? I actually don't know how long you guys exactly have for your pitch. However, keep in mind, just when you're doing your demo, you can still talk at the same time, right? Like your other group members can still say as much as they want while one person provides the demo. If anything, I feel like when you're doing your demo, it would also be a good time to mention why you chose this design. So you go through like why you chose the certain features that you did, the other ideas that you might have had, and why I think this is important to do during your demo is because the judge actually gets to see your solution working, and so it'll only show them why your solution was the optimal design to choose.
Yeah, and kind of just adding on to that, kind of I guess unrelated to our specific our sort of process that we kind of taught, but also don't forget to kind of use a hook. By hook, I mean like really grabbing the judge's attention right away, just kind of what Seeam mentioned beforehand. You want to really, capture or captivate the judge's attention in a really like interesting way where, your specific hack can somewhat revolutionize or solve X in a really cool way, but also in a very concise way of articulating it. Yeah. Any other questions?
A little off topic, but any general tips for anyone in high school right now? I guess I could chime in a bit on this. So I attended Hack the North in grade 11. So it was definitely a great time to see like what the engineering culture was like, because I knew I wanted to come to Waterloo. So obviously Hack the North was like a great place to learn more about the Waterloo culture. I would say learn as much as you can from these experiences. Go to as many workshops as you can, because there's so many people dropping loads and loads of knowledge and wisdom. So just absorb as much as you can from these workshops and just do your best.
Yeah, and I guess kind of adding on to that, at least from my high school experiences, try not to plan out your roadmap per se, or like probably shouldn't be using key terms like roadmap, but just try not to plan out your or go too much on a granular level of planning out your next whatever X amount of years that you want to accomplish. Just try to do things one by one, piece by piece, just like kind of Seeam mentioned. Explore and kind of don't put yourself under a specific scope or roadmap where you have a specific goal or a really, really specific, visible or tangible goal in mind, go with the flow. Yeah. So how much technical implementation should be included? I think I don't know if Seeam you want to answer this, but I think from my perspective, first of all, is to a certain degree, depending on how technical your actual project is. For example, if your project's not too technical from at least like when you're actually building it, you don't have to go into that much of it at all, if that's not the specific value prop you want to really articulate to your judges. What I can say though is, like, for example, if it's just a simple web app but the use case or the feature or the idea is really cool, obviously focus on that. Don't even go too much in the technical implementation. Like, I would say focus more on the general use case, the problem and you're trying to solve, and the demo more so than the actual like software architecture or whatnot. But you could also go vice versa. If it's something like, for example, an AR app that does something really cool within the app itself, or within the camera we're using, or the ML, or for example, it's some sort of really cool new voice recognition integration with VR or something, like, it's really, really technical. It doesn't hurt at all to go into the technical and the implementation, as long as you're finding balance between that and the use case.
Mm-hmm. Adding on to that, that would also be a great time to focus on the impact that your product might be making. Perhaps it's not the most technical product, because keep in mind, like, just because something's super technical doesn't mean it's the best solution out there or it's the most impactful. So this is when you might want to go into like how many people are facing the problem that you're currently tackling, or how significant your solution is going to be in the market. So I think those are definitely important details to mention if you don't have the most technical project. Yeah.
And I saw Yinan's question about how do we prep for Q&A, and actually this is a great question. At least I'm naturally a business student, so what I can answer from here, it might be, it's not exactly fake it till you make it, but it's more so the divide and conquer strategy, where when you are working on your hack, let's say for example for a group of 4, right? And each individual within that group focuses on their own domain. When you're actually building the hack, one focuses on design, 2 or 3 focus on backend, one person focus on front end. When you're actually pitching, each person should know their own domain really well, so that when judges throw questions at you, for example, like how did you build this ML feature? The person who built that backend can answer that, or the judges say, how did you explain your design process? The UI UX designer can be the one to explain that, or how does it solve this specific business problem? Well, the person who obviously came, or at least the PM of the group or the leader of the group, or perhaps just say like the more business person of the group, can help answer that. So divide and conquer. Each person have their own sort of domain of expertise.
I think Michael has a pretty interesting question. So how do you know if you want to do product management or software engineering? I feel like, so I guess I could answer this because before I'd gone to product management, I was doing software engineering, and that's definitely a super, super common field that people do, obviously, because of the abundance of careers there. I realized that I was better fit for product management just because I was more interested in the user side of the things I was building. So I wasn't too invested or interested in actually building the products that I researched. More so, I was more interested in doing the user research or coming up with the ideation behind what was being developed. So that's what ultimately motivated me to transition to product management.
Yeah, I think pretty much, like, if I were to answer that question in the same exact words, I think that's one of the biggest factors you probably want to ask yourself when you're deciding between PM and SWE. Any other questions?
So, okay, are product managers usually engineers or business students? I don't think there's a usually. Do you want to tackle this? I guess I could chime in as well after if you have something to.
Yeah. So to answer your question, basically, by engineers, if you're including both the domain of computer science students and traditional engineers, then I would say yes. The majority of product managers currently, at least the more technical PM roles, are in fact, mostly CS and engineering students. What I can say though is that whatever number it actually encapsulates the actual percentages and whatnot, don't let that discourage you per se. I think for more, I guess like there's the traditional PM role and there's the more technical PM role. Yeah, like technical PM role, obviously people would want to look for CS and engineering students, but not 100% like, there are business students in that role too. They're able to do it really well. But yes, like, and then for the traditional PM role where it's kind of like all three, not just, the technical, but you want to be more customer facing as well. I think that's actually like really diverse if I'm not mistaken, because as the moment you asked that question, I was like, yo, you got one business student on with me and then you got CM who's in engineering. So we're basically reflecting that straight up. But CM, if you wanted to add anything.
Is there anything?
So how do you estimate the impact of your solution? What I can say from at least my experience when I'm pitching, when I've done hackathons and I've tried to pitch the impact of what we've been trying to build, I always kind of go backwards and look at the industry problem first. So when you're really, trying to quantify the industry problem or the market problem that you're trying to solve, for example, there are 10,000 people within the local area who suffer from X problem, or there is a decrease in the number of said users who are able to do X. That's when you kind of go back and use those specific target market numbers, or that, anything that's able to quantify the industry or the market or the use case that you want to tackle, and then kind of go back on there when you're talking about your solution and say, this solution is able to help tackle that specific problem and increase X, or is able to increase that industry problem. So it's all about, the quantifiable numbers that you're able to find from the use case.
Mm-hmm. Is it easy to go from software engineering to PM? I don't think anyone could call it easy. I feel like it's definitely doable. It gets very doable. A lot of people get it done. Obviously, you have to put in work. You have to understand what PM is exactly. And then, like, I could go into depth about some routes people take. For example, some people, they'll start off working as a developer, but then they'll try and pick up some PM responsibilities along the way so that they get a better idea of what a product manager might do. And then from there, it's just a steady transition. Honestly, like, obviously a lot of software skills also transition into PM. For example, the whole collaboration and everything, and understanding and being able to work with engineering teams. That's really important as a PM. So skills like that are really transferable to product management.
And yeah, I think Michael's kind of mentioning working at a startup. I personally, I think, so currently right now I'm working technically at a very fast growing startup. I've I've had the honor to work in both a very, very early stage startup and a more established fast growing startup. What can I say though is that both startups offer really unique experiences and, all the obvious cliche stuff. But what I can really kind of also say is early stage startups, if you are able to, commit time and resources to working for an early stage startup, or even, as part of like a full-time or even a part-time role, try to actually do get that experience during your undergraduate or if you're in high school even, because doing so exposes you to so many things that you would otherwise not be able to find even if you were in a more established organization. For example, you get more flexibility to tackle different unique problems or creative challenges or anything that you see from your angle and that's worth tackling. But there's a corporate hierarchy that prevents you from doing so, or there's a corporate barrier. That barrier is essentially non-existent within that startup sort of stage. So doing that gives you extra leverage to explore so many things and grow exponentially as well.
Casey, I don't know how much time we have we're allowed to be answering questions. So do you also want to drop our LinkedIn's in the chat? So if they have any more questions, they can shoot us a message or something.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think what we can probably do is, should you want to call it at 10:40 and just say that, yeah, also drop some LinkedIn's there too.
Yeah, I guess I'll just make sure this works. There are not any more. Do you want to start a company? I mean, that'd definitely be a fun thing to try in the future. So, yeah, that'd be cool.
I think Rebecca's asking, so do you need software experience to be a PM? And I've actually personally encountered this problem in the past. I'm not traditionally from computer science and engineering, so I think I have some good experience to kind of talk about this. But essentially, the quick answer is no, but it's a very complicated answer per se, because the fact that you also still want that product management experience. You want to be able to show that you are able to identify problems, go through that, ideation phase all the way to, designing something really cool. So I would say, even though you might not necessarily need software experience, especially for a non-technical PM role, like you can still focus on business requirements. You can still focus on creating mockups, prototyping, designing, explaining personas and use cases, and how that ties back to the market problem that you identified. Yeah, so short answer is no, you don't need software experience. But what I can say though, because I've done hackathons, I've had to learn software on the side. I've had to learn some front end and ML, or at least data analysis work. Is it never hurts. It's always a pro to have software experience when you're looking for PM roles. So even if you are non-traditionally like a non-CS or engineering student, like you're in business like me, there's so many online resources that's not really an excuse to say, no, I don't want to learn it because it's not part of my school curriculum. You can still go and learn it. And there's so many different free resources out there to try to do it. So yeah, it's always a pro no matter what. So I guess I'll throw this in there too. And yeah, it's like, it'd be great to start a company one day, obviously. I think from my perspective, and I think probably CM too, is if I honestly really had a crazy passionate idea that I really felt like I was aligned to, and I felt like it was not solved, and I had the sort of commitment and resources at like during those times or in that circumstance to be able to tackle it, I would. Otherwise, I would love to try to find an early stage team that's already, sort of growing or is, about to grow, and try to join that instead. Obtain the similar experience in terms of growing a startup, chasing some sort of passion that, or at least some sort of company mission that you somewhat align with anyways, while, you don't have to commit to starting it yourself if you don't have, if you're in a circumstance where you don't have the resources to do so yourself. Yeah, otherwise, I think we could probably call it if no one else has any questions here. Yes, add us on LinkedIn, drop any questions on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
I think we should be good, yeah. So thanks for listening, everyone. We really enjoyed sharing all the insight that we had and answering your questions.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your Saturday.
Take care.
Here, peace.